Today on the Wrestling Roundtable, what to do and what not to do, along with the best and worst pay-per-views of all time. Welcome to the Wrestling Roundtable. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria, been a fan of 21 years, and I'm also very involved with Pro Wrestling Respect. Want you to pick up the Pro Wrestling Respect 2 DVD available at our store, and please visit ProWrestlingRespect.com for more information. Next show's coming up August 22nd. We hope to see you in Burlington, New Jersey, as we have for Will Brooks, who's been a fan of wrestling for 21 years and has come to every Pro Wrestling Respect show. Join the club. And sitting to my right, which is your left, Will Vafides, fan of 21 years, and Rodney LeConte, fan of 21 years as well. All been watching wrestling a long time, and we've picked up a lot of stuff, you would think, because a lot of people will say, you don't know what you're talking about if you've never stepped foot in the ring, or, yeah, because I've never directed a movie and I don't know what a good movie is. But I think if you've been watching wrestling as long as we have, hell, even if you've been watching a month, you pick up patterns. You understand what makes you like it about wrestling. So, recently on Roundtable Radio, we were talking about the NXT angle when it started off with Bryan Danielson, that segment where they invaded and everything. And everyone was talking about, well, if they do this, it's messed up. And if they do this, they have to do it right. They have to do this, do that. What's our basis for comparison is what I want to get at with what to do and what not to do. What is an example of what should be done with a storyline or feud, in your opinion? So starting off, what do you think is a good example of what to do?
The main thing you got to do is you have to build it up. There's got to be some reason for the conflict to actually occur. Something has to happen in order for it, and there has to be a resolution. You should have that already planned out from A to Z. You should already have that planned out way ahead of time. If you don't have that planned out, you got nothing. You're kind of just scrambling to try to make things together. If you have an idea, you put it on paper, and you have it all laid out, then what the wrestler's job is to do is to go out there and make that storyline believable and that the crowd can see it and are emotionally invested in what you are trying to accomplish.
Give us an example of something.
As an example of one of those to me was the Jerry Lawler-Bret Hart storyline 93. That to me was excellent because you bring the King of the Ring back, this time in pay-per-view form. The very first show, you have a guy proclaiming to be a king.
Legitimate Memphis legend way before WWF.
Well, like I said, people like me, I never actually saw that.
Right.
Okay, so I'm looking at this guy like I don't even know who he is. Okay, and then he ends up knocking out Bret Hart when he has no storylines, and then they produce an unbelievable storyline that took years to resolve. So you have.
Well, if he hadn't been accused of statutory rape, then it wouldn't have taken as long.
That's true. They had a SummerSlam match where he was, mocking his family up.
We did that every week.
Yeah, he did that every week. He did that. He didn't even get involved in the SummerSlam match in the first place, claiming he had a real fake injury. And then, just on commentary alone, the King's just killing Bret Hart all the time. So it's constantly building up. And there were some altercations. And finally in 95, with the Kiss My Foot match, and basically just shut him up completely. When 95 was excellent. And then, of course, when he turned heel, that's when Jerry Lawler started liking him, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole point was that there was a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end to the whole thing. And I think that was one of the best things I've seen, was that storyline, especially as a kid. Growing up, you wanted to punch Jerry Lawler. You just could not stand him. Because of all
I couldn't stop laughing.
It was funny. That's what I'm saying. Like, now you look back on it, it's really funny what he did, but he just was so good at everything he did.
I think one of the best parts of that storyline was years later when the Hart Foundation reunited and Jerry Lawler's crying on commentary, which is really good. Yes. But talking about the Nexus angle, I think a great parallel was one of the best thought-out storylines ever in wrestling, executed very well, was the Outsiders' debut leading to the Bash of the Beach in 1996. You have Razor and Diesel coming back to WCW. It looks like they're invading, and it wasn't something where they come in and start beating people up right away. It slowly progressed, and it wasn't something that was constantly mentioned on Nitro. Great American Bash with Nash jackknife powerbomb to Eric Bischoff. Then it really led to an uneasy feeling on WCW, them coming out with the bats in the middle of the tag match, and then leading up to Bash at the Beach. And mind you, they didn't wrestle, not one match in WCW. They didn't get in backstage brawls.
They didn't come out in the ring like it's a segment and cut promos.
They actually had to go and buy tickets on the show and everything like that, and then having the locker room reunite, people painting their faces. and then the Bash at the Beach match with Luger coming out, and then Hogan being the third man, not revealed until the very end. Perfect. That was just like one of the biggest holy shit endings.
Well, there was also a lot of rumors at the time because Bret Hart's contract was up. Maybe he'd be the third man. Maybe Sting or Luger would turn heel. But Hogan had been a babyface forever, and that's why it meant a lot.
And then it's because Hogan, he said it best, like, who knows by the great big company up north than me? The Monday Night Wars were really picking up, and perfect timing to create the storyline. And it felt real, too. Like he said, you have to have a storyline that feels real, and this did. And I think this was, if you really want to create an invasion storyline, you really have to look at this as your backbone.
Of course, the NWO started off as a what to do and ended up being a what not to do.
Yeah, well, that's why I ended at Bash at the Beach
right.
96.
Well, but we will be moving on to what not to do in a little bit. What's your example, Will, of what to do?
An angle that's been done to death, and more often not they screw it up, is the monster heel or the monster guy, the unstoppable force. And the last time I feel they've ever done it correctly was Brock Lesnar. When he jumped in the first time, I had stopped watching wrestling. I was kind of a fair weather fan at the time. But I remember my brother said, Will, check this guy out. And I remember the first, he played it for me. Brock Lesnar jumps in from the crowd, having no idea who this guy was. It's a humongous guy, and tears up everybody. Beats the shit out of everybody.
Clean.
Yes, clean. Does a double or triple powerbomb on Spike Dudley. And all of a sudden you're just like, who the fuck is this guy? And all of a sudden here comes Paul Heyman. You're like, oh man, what the hell's going on now? What's going on? I gotta see this.
Mouthpiece for him.
Exactly. It was the last time a manager actually did anything. And it was, wow, it made me want to watch. Who the hell is this guy? What is going on? It really had me going, and it's the last time I'd ever done like the monster heel, the monster guy correctly.
Pretty much the way he beat Hogan, building up to beating The Rock was great. And when he finally did beat Undertaker at Hell in a Cell, that I think really put him over the top as, yes, this guy is legit. At least he could do that in wrestling and people accepted it. It's still not happening in MMA, it seems. But speaking of the NWO, I wanted to bring up the Macho Man DDP feud, because this started off as outsiders, and of course that did spark the lawsuit with WWF and WCW because they were portraying them as coming from WWF. But once they had that lawsuit happen and they switched more to, no, we were bitter about our WCW run, they were teaming with DDP back then as the Diamond Stud and Vinny Vegas. So we all know they were friends from back then, and DDP wasn't a mega star yet, but they went to their old friend to try and bring him in, and no, he hits him with that awesome finish that he had. People went nuts. It was almost like a star was born overnight. Then Macho Man joined the NWO shortly after that, and that started off this great feud, like, you were the wrestler with no name, I'm the Macho Man. And they both had women valets, Miss Elizabeth, Kimberly Page. It was a great parallel between the old legend, the cool guy Macho Man, and dirty common man DDP, and it really did make DDP into a star. But also the Savage Flair match in 1992 at WrestleMania. And I bring that up because we've talked about on the show before how disappointed we were at the time as kids that we didn't get the big Hogan Flair dream match. Talk about getting lemons and making lemonade. They went to the second choice for whatever reasons with Savage, and they ended up making a feud that people still remember and even bled over into WCW. It became so good. But speaking of bleeding over, one other one I want to mention is the Tommy Dreamer Raven feud, because that went on for years, involved many, many people, and had a great blow-off. They had the backstory with him being a pain in his ass in grade school and getting the girl, and now Tommy Dreamer is this guy in ECW, and he's got this pain coming back from his childhood. And Raven, of course, was a great character at the time, getting a lot of people involved, interweaving lots of feuds with that one. But also, he never beat him. And when he finally did, Raven's last match before leaving for WCW, which of course that segment segued into the WWF invasion with Jerry Lawler, Van Dam, Sabu. But connected all together was when Raven came back from WCW in '99, and the last match the Dudleys were going to have before leaving for WWF as the tag champs, he comes back, saves Dreamer, and they win the tag belts. That was a great moment to me and brought it full circle. But we brought this conversation full circle, and we're going to continue on with the opposite. What not to do when we come back.
It's over. High kick.
keeping him out.
Watch all of your favorite fighting events live on GoFightLive.tv.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. We were just talking about what to do, and the real answer is, of course, marry the boss's daughter or work out with Triple H. But we're going to move on to what not to do. Joining the panel to my left, which is your right, is Chris Harris, fan of 18 years, and you've been a part of the Wrestling Roundtable a long time, so we need your support. If you're going to buy anything from Amazon, please do it at our Amazon store. Not just WWE, TNA, and UFC, if you're getting anything. Or you can go to the Wrestling Roundtable website and get our t-shirt to support the Wrestling Roundtable. So, moving on. What not to do, the opposite. How do you fumble a feud or storyline so thoroughly that no one wants to see it anymore or it's completely ruined? I will go to you first, Chris. What is an example of what not to do?
I just want to go back real quick. You guys brought up the movie analogy on the last show. How do they start these storylines not knowing where it's going?
Mm-hmm.
Rodney, you make movies.
Right.
If you were to make your movie and you had 3 pages of a script, would you start shooting it without finishing it?
Apparently not.
It doesn't make sense when you look at television shows and you look at lots of bad endings.
And
and
hey,
series
they always
finales.
talk about we're an episodic television show.
If you look at a show like Lost, they knew where they were going the entire. You have to know where.
Are you sure about
going.
that?
I don't know about that.
You have to know. You have to know where this is going to end. That being said, you can take your pick between any of these organizations and find one. I'm going to pick TNA because they haven't been picked on today. Where to even begin? ECW. They're bringing it back. Why? Why are we bringing this back? Just like Hogan, it was supposed to save this
Hogan
company.
and Friends.
Hogan and Friends were supposed to save the company.
By the way, I came up with that. We're actually using that now. What?
Hogan and Friends couldn't save it.
Sounds like a
so
cartoon.
so those guys that couldn't even draw a 1.0 on TNN on Friday nights 11 years ago apparently are going to save the show. This is a prime example of we don't know where we're going.
The Austin hit in 1999. They did it, but then they're like, okay, now we got to pick somebody. Now,
We
you
have
know.
a full year to
Now
decide
here's
who's
the
going to
thing:
do
if
this.
they would have picked Triple H the whole time, it would have made sense because the guy overall, he had a match with him. He was afraid to lose to him, and he took him out, and he had his reign for a whole year. That made total sense. Then you have Rikishi, who just joined the company as Rikishi at the time, be the guy because he did it for The Rock, which made absolute no sense.
Of course you don't get it, Whitey.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then they eventually say Triple H was the mastermind behind it, but why didn't he just be the guy that just did it? That's where it failed to me because Rikishi was still hot, believe it or not, he really was. And the fact that Triple H should have been the guy the whole time, but Rikishi was like, oh, Rikishi?
Mm-hmm. No one wanted to see him.
No
turn
one
heel.
understood that. Like that was the last guy I would look at.
RVD's reign in WWF, right around the Invasion time, he came in beating Jeff Hardy. Guy was very, very hot, putting on good matches, and then it kind of flatlined there. This was really one of their biggest missed opportunities because, yeah, even though they gave him the title about 5 years too late, but no one really cared that much as they would have back in 01. But they had this match with Austin. He fought The Rock, and they didn't really mean anything, and he didn't even end up winning the title. So to me, it was just really bad way to take one of the stars.
It seems more they were afraid, I think, more than actually that. That's just I think they were just afraid of going that route.
They knew this guy was hot. The fans were speaking. You want to listen to your fans. Mm-hmm. That was the time. Mm-hmm. That probably would have made the invasion somewhat
tolerable.
Tolerable.
He was too busy getting high rather than spotting Triple H.
Triple H wasn't been around back then. It would have been the perfect time.
Yeah, get it while the getting's good.
Exactly.
Well, last week we talked about Bret Hart's heel turn in 1997 and how wonderfully done that was. The opposite is Bret Hart's heel turns in WCW in 1998. Stuff that he did for no reason. Turning a week later, he turned face, turned heel, turned face. People can't get behind that. If you're going to turn someone, stick with it. Have a motivation. They didn't have either one of them. And a lot of people say it was Hogan fucking around with Bret Hart so he wouldn't be as over. Well, it worked.
Yeah.
But another good example, if you want to talk about someone's run in WWE, is Goldberg. Now, we could give a lot of examples, but I'll stick with just the Rock feud. So he comes in, has a great segment where he spears The Rock, and people knew he was coming in and everything. But he got nothing on The Rock after that. Rock got 15 minutes to do
rock concert.
to do rock concerts and sing.
excellent.
And it's funny, but Goldberg got
The
nothing.
original gay cowboy.
He didn't even
No,
get
he beat
revenge
up
on
Gilbert.
Gilbert.
Yeah.
Gilbert's right there. He could have speared him, and no, we can't even allow him that. His stupid car wouldn't start in that one dumb segment. Didn't make him look any better. He got beat up by The Rock with a chair. Excuse me?
What?
Excuse me, Goldberg selling a chair shot? What the fuck?
Goldberg selling.
Not a good way to start.
Did I say?
Goldberg.
What did I say?
Just Goldberg selling in general.
Yeah.
So,
And most of it can't be blamed on Goldberg either.
but also the NWO in 2002. Jeez, was that the complete opposite of what the NWO should have been? These three guys would beat up the Horsemen, the Dungeon of Doom, other people all by themselves. But then Austin, one guy, is able to beat them all up, kidnap Scott Hall in a match no one really even wanted to see. It's Hulk Hogan. He's in
Yeah.
there with the NWO. Hogan, Austin.
The real NWO.
Right. And they debuted on Heat too, so that didn't help.
Yeah.
But the biggest example to me of what not to do, and it's really been annoying me for like 10 years, speaking of ECW, was when Taz came back to ECW in 2000 for like one night or two nights because Mike Awesome had just signed with WCW. Mike Awesome was ECW champion at the time, just signed with WCW. So instead of, and I can't believe this, instead of having Tommy fucking Dreamer beat Mike Awesome, Paul Heyman goes the ridiculous route and has a WWF contracted guy beat Mike Awesome just to have a soundbite, just to have a cute little fact. Instead of putting his company over, why would you put a WWF guy over, especially with what happened with Triple H? So, and then he lost to Tommy Dreamer anyway, and Dreamer had the belt for like 20 minutes. But it just never made sense to me. Why would you not put your company over instead of the WWF guy? So that never made sense to me, but I think it does make sense to move on to the best and worst pay-per-views of all time when we come back.